When I asked why he unilaterally made a family card for his in-laws, Robert laughed and said, "Because they're my family, of course they should have a family card, right? Got a problem with that? If you knew who took you in when you were all alone, you wouldn't be able to say such things, would you?" I was taken aback by his arrogant tone, which I had never heard before. Was Robert always this kind of person? "If you're grateful, you should do more for my family. Then I'll acknowledge you as part of the family. Until then, it's like you're on a provisional license." I had never heard of such a thing as a provisional phase in marriage. Robert pressed further, seeing me silent. "In other words, you're not yet a formal member of the family. If you don't like it, you can leave any time, okay? For now, our family is just the 5 of us. Useless parasites, out." Understood. After I immediately canceled all our joint credit cards and moved out. My name is Emily Wilder. 27 years old. I'm a freelance illustrator. I used to work as a designer for a major advertising agency, but I went independent 2 years ago when I got married, and now I work from home. My parents died in an accident when I was young. I was taken in by my maternal grandparents, but when I went to college, I moved back to the apartment near the city center where I lived with my parents, and I've been living there ever since. I met my husband, Robert, at the Italian restaurant where he worked. It was a place with a nice atmosphere, reasonable prices, and good food, so my colleagues and I started stopping by frequently. That's when Robert, the handsome waiter, became a topic of conversation. Robert was indeed good-looking. The manager once laughingly said that a good percentage of the regulars came for Robert, and it was easy to see why. I won't deny that I became one of Robert's fans because I thought he was cool. He was that much of a standout. However, for some reason, we rapidly grew closer, and before I knew it, we were being called a couple, and to my surprise, we ended up getting married. I don't remember much about that time. It's almost like I was drunk, and when I sobered up, there was a man I was calling my husband next to me. But even so, I loved Robert at that time and was happy. When I got married, I quit the company where I had been working as a designer and went independent. It was an amicable resignation, transferring the work I had been doing at the company to a freelance basis. Robert continued working at the Italian restaurant, with different working hours each day, sometimes late into the night. It became a bit difficult to keep working as usual, and I had always wanted to go independent, so I decided to take the plunge. "It's a good idea, Emily. It'll be easier on you, and it's good to keep doing the work you love." Robert agreed, and that's how our newlywed life started. We both didn't like flashy things, so we decided not to have a wedding ceremony and just register our marriage, meeting each other's families for a face-to-face greeting. Robert went to work, and I worked and did household chores at home. Our schedules were irregular, but we kept in touch and waited for each other to come home for meals. It was a happy and fun everyday life, and I thought, marriage is nice. But about a year after getting married, Robert suddenly said this, and everything fell apart. "My family wants to come over, is that okay?" he asked. Of course, I said it was fine. I had only met and briefly talked to Robert's family during our initial greeting, so I thought this would be a chance to get to know them better. Having lost my parents at a young age, I had always admired Robert's large family. But when his family of 4 arrived, I was left speechless. "Hey, which room is mine?" his sister asked as soon as she entered our house. Robert's sister, 32 years old, was 5 years older than both Robert and me, and I had heard she worked at a local supermarket. I was shocked by her rude manner, so different from the polite greeting she had given me when we first met. Robert's 18-year-old sister was also there, but in contrast, she didn't say a word and just stood there silently. I remember. She barely spoke when we first met for greetings. Hastened by Robert's sister, I showed the 2 sisters to the guest room, and Robert's parents to the room, which used to be my parents' room. It was the only Japanese-style room in the apartment, so I thought it would be best for them. After settling into their rooms, Robert's sister declared, "Well, since we're going to be living here together, you better start serving our family properly." I was confused by what she meant, but when I looked at Robert for help, he was laughing in a way I had never seen before. It turned out his family had given up their own home and moved into my apartment without my knowledge. "Sorry, apparently our family home suddenly had to be vacated, and they had nowhere to go," he explained. I wish he had told me earlier, as I had assumed it was just for a day or two, and this was really inconvenient. When I mentioned this to Robert, trying not to upset him, he looked down and apologized. "Anyway, please just until they find somewhere else to go." I couldn't say no. How could I turn away people in need, especially the family of someone important to me, without even a place to go? I reluctantly agreed to live together, on the condition that they find a new place as soon as possible. But I would come to regret this decision. Robert's family showed no restraint. All four of them, from the day they moved in, did nothing and left everything to me, saying whatever they wanted. They made no effort to look for a house or a job. When I asked about their jobs, I was in for another surprise. "Oh, I quit that lousy supermarket job." She had said she was employed, but apparently, it was just part-time work. I had assumed she was a full-time employee due to her age, but she revealed she hadn't had a steady job since high school. Robert's parents were also in part-time jobs and had quit before coming here. And, of course, Robert's sister was unemployed. She had said she was a student, but that was a lie. Why should I work when I've become part of a wealthy family? A wealthy family? Who was she talking about? When I asked, I got another shocking reply. "You, of course. You got a big settlement and insurance money from your parents' accident, and you don't even have a mortgage on this apartment. You can live without working," Robert's sister said, laughing. I protested to Robert when he got home, but he raised his voice in a way I had never seen before. "Everyone's tired from suddenly having to leave their home. Let them rest for a while. Or do you want to cruelly kick out my family, Emily?" Stunned, I froze. Then Robert suddenly softened his tone. "Sorry for yelling. I'm having a tough time too. I've been busy and tired today. Can you understand? Just a little more patience, please." Robert was good at handling women. Looking back, he probably always used a mix of kindness and harshness to get his way with women. But at that moment, I didn't realize it and reluctantly agreed to endure a little longer. And the tyranny of Robert's family got worse. They treated me like a servant when at home and demanded money when going out. "We can't go job hunting without a penny, can we? It's fine, but if we can't find work, we'll just keep living here." I reluctantly gave them some money, which of course they claimed to have spent without finding a job. They probably never looked for work. But if I said that, they would accuse me of lying without proof, and Robert's whole family would blame me for hours. Telling Robert didn't solve the problem. "Everyone's frustrated about not finding jobs. Sorry, just bear with it a little longer. I'll talk to them," Robert said, trying to smooth things over. But as time went on, I felt like saying anything was pointless. However, the frequency of them asking for money gradually decreased, perhaps because Robert said something, so the issue seemed to resolve itself. Of course, the money I had given them was never returned. Then, after about 3 months of living this way, I noticed something alarming. "Why is the credit card bill so high? Could it be unauthorized use?" When I quickly checked the statement, all the charges were made with family credit cards. The purchases ranged from food and drinks to books, games, and even expensive brand bags and clothes. Each item was labeled with a number from 1 to 5, indicating that 5 family credit cards had been issued. Currently, these credit cards are in my name, with Robert using the family cards. "It seemed like you'd be better at handling this, and it's more convenient to consolidate payments, right? Can I leave it to you?" he said, and I ended up managing them. But it seemed these family cards had been issued without my knowledge. Robert's family stopped asking for money because they could now make credit card payments and cash withdrawals. When I confronted Robert about why he made family cards for his in-laws without asking me, he laughed and said, "Well, you complain when they say they have no money, so what choice do I have? Besides, you know who took you in when you were all alone, right? Can you really say such things to the important family of your benefactor?" I was stunned into silence by his arrogant tone, unlike anything I had heard before. Was Robert always like this? "If you're grateful, you should serve my family more. Then I'll acknowledge you as family too. Until then, consider it like you're on a provisional license." I had never heard of a provisional phase in marriage. Noticing my silence, Robert pressed further. "This means you're not yet an official family member. If you don't like it, you can leave any time, you know? Right now, it's just the 5 of us in our family. Useless parasites, get out." That's when I realized Robert's true nature. I felt as if all the blood had drained from my body, shocked. I considered divorcing Robert. In fact, I began to wonder why I married Robert in the first place. Initially, I just thought he was a handsome guy. Like the other girls, I was just excited about him being handsome, without any particular intent. Then one time, when I left to go to the restroom, Robert approached me. "You seem different from other people, Emily." "Huh? I don't know how to put it, mystical?" "Sorry, it's not something I should say to a customer." I was taken aback. That continued, and I gradually started to notice Robert. Maybe that was his strategy to make me like him. Thinking about it calmly, it started to make sense. I remember, when Robert came to our table for small talk, a colleague jokingly said I was a wealthy heiress living alone in a condo. It was right after that he started talking to me. Probably, he was after my wealth and this condo. Robert wasn't really my type. To put it nicely, he was modern. To put it bluntly, he seemed somewhat frivolous. I liked mature men who could talk quietly and seriously, but I ended up falling for Robert. I always found that strange. Robert was the so-called handsome guy. It must have been easy for him to charm a woman, especially someone like me, not used to men and newly into the workforce. I fell for his tactics and ended up marrying him. The thought made me so frustrated and embarrassed, I felt like destroying everything in the house. But I wasn't foolish enough to act on that impulse. I decided to get revenge, somehow. For that, I needed to endure this life a little longer. Like Robert manipulated me, I would control his entire family. The condo we live in was bought by my father with a mortgage soon after I was born. It wasn't very expensive back then, but the area developed rapidly with a new shopping center nearby, and now it's considered a luxury condo. My parents, hoping for more children, bought a spacious condo. That's why there's enough room even with Robert's family moving in. But even with its decent size, having Robert's family around is a nuisance for me, working from home. I'm enduring this only for the sake of revenge. As Robert's sister said, there's no mortgage payment for this condo. When I was 3, both of my parents passed away. In a car accident. They died on their way back from my paternal grandfather's funeral, after colliding with a speeding car on the freeway. That day, I was supposed to go with them, but I had caught the flu that's going around and had a high fever. So, my maternal grandparents came to the condo where we lived with my parents to take care of me, leaving me as the only one who survived. The mortgage payments were covered by the group credit life insurance. So the only housing costs I pay are the management fees and property taxes. Robert, seeing the amount, said he would contribute just a bit more than that to our household expenses. There's no mortgage, so if I put in that much, we should manage Emily's income, right? We'll each use our own earnings for personal expenses. Sounds good, doesn't it? I agreed, thinking maybe he was right. Until then, I had been paying for everything by myself, so I thought his contribution would lighten my load. Looking back, it was foolish, but but at the time, I was blinded by my love for Robert and just went along with whatever he said. Robert probably thinks he's the head of the household and the one supporting me, which is why he can so easily call me a parasite. But in reality, it's different. I pay for most of the expenses like utilities, food, social expenses, and entertainment. And now, 5 real parasites had been added to my household, making it impossible to manage with just that amount. I wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible, but I pretended not to notice and endured. I gritted my teeth and let Robert's family freely shop, reminding myself that I'll be the one laughing in the end to get through these tough times. Then, 3 months after deciding to divorce, the day to act finally came. I'm tired. Please decide. It's either me or your family, I told Robert, presenting him with a final decision. He was surprised, but I continued without concern. None of your family members lift a finger to help around the house. They just dump all their chores on me. You know I work from home. I'm not just playing around. Yet, they treat me like a freeloader and tell me to know my place since you're supporting me. I've had enough. I cried as I confronted Robert. He looked at me, smirked, and said, "Then you should leave. Didn't I tell you before? You're not really a part of this family yet. Giving up like this means you didn't earn your place in the family." I pretended to be shocked as I looked at Robert. "What are you surprised about? If you can't live with my family, then you're the one who has to leave. Oh, and since I'm not at fault, I'll take this apartment as alimony. And I'll take half of your savings as part of the property division." Ah, so that was his aim all along. That's why his whole family kept harassing me, trying to drive me out. I knew it, but hearing it outright was still a shock. It was someone I once loved and even married. But thanks to this, I made up my mind. "Fine," I said, deciding to divorce Robert. "But this condo is mine. And I'm not at fault either." "What did you say?" "The reason for the divorce is you allowing your family to live with us without consulting me, and your family ignoring me." I said it firmly to Robert. He seemed shocked that I outright rejected his proposal, not expecting such a response. It made sense, as I had always complied with his demands since our marriage. Thinking back on it, it made me angry. "I don't want to spend another second with you all, so I'll leave now, but you should also prepare to leave." "It's a joke, right? This is our home, we won't leave. Ever heard of residential rights? You can't just force people out who live here," Robert shouted. Ignoring his ranting, I left the house and went to my grandparents' place. I explained everything and asked if I could stay until things were settled. My grandparents were shocked to learn what I had gone through and scolded me for not consulting them earlier, tears in their eyes. "Grandma, Grandpa, I'm sorry for worrying you. But I'll be okay now. You know, I might look docile, but I'm not really," I said with forced laughter, tears in my eyes. The day after I left the apartment, Robert contacted me right away. "Hey, what's this all about?" "What are you referring to?" "The certified mail." I was impressed by the quick work. I had left the divorce proceedings to a lawyer, and when I told them yesterday that I was leaving the house, they arranged for everything to be delivered today. "I'm not paying any alimony, and I'm not leaving the condo, just so you know," Robert declared. "But legally, you have an obligation to pay, and you don't have the right to continue living in that apartment," I responded. "What are you talking about? That apartment is mine too, since we're married. If you insist, then pay me half its value to buy me out." Such an absurd claim. Talking like this is getting us nowhere. "Please communicate through my lawyer from now on," I said, ending the call. I knew he would probably call again tomorrow, but I had no desire to talk anymore today. As expected, he called the next morning. "Hey, what's this all about?" He repeated the same line as yesterday. No creativity at all. What are you referring to? The card's not working. What did you do? What I did was cancel it. That card was mine, and you were just using the family card, remember? Indeed, before leaving the house, I had switched all the contracts from that card to another and canceled it. Of course, the family cards would stop working when I cancel mine. I was paying for it, too. Yes, you paid the apartment's management fee and property taxes. Just for the first 2 months. It's not much, but I can deduct that from the alimony if you like. When I mocked him like that, I heard some indistinct shouting from the other end of the phone. That's right, Robert only paid the agreed amount for just 2 months. He made various excuses about the store and whatnot, always finding a reason to ask me to wait, but then he stopped paying altogether. If he forgot and thought he was still paying, that's some poor memory. But I didn't care anymore. He's someone I'm cutting ties with, his memory doesn't matter to me. That's the situation, so please pay your half of the living expenses I've been covering. I've kept a detailed household ledger, which I'll submit as evidence. Then divide the savings properly. It's marital property, he demanded. Yes, I understand. Let's split it accordingly. I agreed, and he ended the call with a parting shot, reminding me not to forget. Hey, what's that all about? Then, a few days later, I got another call with the same line. I realized they lacked not only memory but vocabulary as well. What do you mean? The split of shared property. Why is it 0? You must be rolling in cash from your parents' insurance and alimony. Ah, so that's what they were thinking. I patiently explained that my savings before marriage weren't part of the shared property, and since we had no savings after marriage, it naturally amounted to 0. Don't lie to me. If you think I'm lying, why don't you consult with someone? Anyway, from now on, please communicate through my attorney. I won't be speaking to you directly anymore. Goodbye. I said that, hung up the phone, and blocked Robert's number. 2 months after I left the house, Robert and his family finally moved out of the apartment. Not because they had a change of heart, but because they couldn't sustain their living. Naturally, Robert's income alone wasn't enough for a family of 5. They were used to shopping extravagantly with my card, telling them to cut back now was impossible. I had let them use the card intentionally for this. Knowing them, I was sure it would come to this. His family started pestering Robert for shopping money, and when he refused, they began stealing from his wallet. Even when Robert got mad, they blamed him for kicking me out. To top it off, the electricity, gas, and water were all shut off. Of course, I had arranged for that, since I had no plans to live there for a while. Robert tried to get them restored immediately over the phone, but the house was in my name. No one else could get them reconnected if the owner had them stopped. During the hot summer and early fall, his family couldn't bear the extreme heat and eventually left the condo. Where they went, I neither know nor care. Robert tried to stay till the end, but eventually gave up due to the lack of electricity and the inability to bathe. The divorce proceedings went faster than expected. Not because Robert had a change of heart, but because he messed up. He cheated on me while we were still married. Or rather, he had started making moves on someone thinking he could kick me out soon. He bragged about owning a luxury apartment in a prime location downtown, luring young girls there. It's surprising he did this while his family was around, but he had a history of such behavior, so they didn't mind. He was handsome, so I suspected he might do such things. Before leaving, I had installed cameras in several places in the house, which captured all the evidence. Maybe he underestimated me, but he really did disrespect me. He brought his family into my home without my permission, made a family card and left me the bill, kicked me out, and cheated on me. I demanded a hefty sum in alimony for all these. When Robert saw the amount, he turned pale and desperately pleaded for reconciliation, but I had no such intentions. Knowing he couldn't pay, I made him borrow as much as possible from his company and took whatever I could get. When I threatened to sue him for fraud over the family card, he reluctantly agreed to my terms. Well, I hope he does his best to pay off his debt. The divorce is finalized, and I'm still staying at my grandparents' place. I haven't decided what to do with the apartment yet. I might sell it. I treasured it because my parents left it to me, but since they passed away when I was very young and I have no memories of them, plus all this has happened, I think they'd understand if I let it go. My work as an illustrator is picking up. I might live alone again, but it's a good time for that. I can work just fine staying at my grandparents'. I'll depend on them a little longer, then move forward with strength. Next time, I won't be fooled by a man who's only good-looking. I hope to find a partner I can share my life with.